Well, of course, we knew that it was going to be a video image display for President Obama. They set up all of the choreography, the cameras, the lights, the seating arrangement is all masterminded by the White House and the image masters of President Obama. So we expected that. And as I watched this thing unfold around the table, I'm seeing something that I didn't expect, and that is I thought the president might actually listen, since he knows he's on national television, being criticized for not allowing these kind of discussions on C-SPAN as he promised, but instead I'm watching him consistently interrupt Republicans who are trying to make factual points. And he has made the point several times that he disagrees with Republican facts, and it challenges the integrity of the Republicans that are presenting those facts. And they reached an impasse several times on that too. So I watched multiple interruptions on the part of President Obama, and each time he interrupted a Democrat, he interrupted a Republican more than twice as often. And I've also watched, if you just add up the time that people are allowed to talk, the president brokering the time, and what do we call him? The moderator-in-chief is brokering the time, and Democrat time is at least 4 minutes for every minute that a Republican speaks. So this isn't bipartisan negotiations. The president has refused to take his massive socialized medicine bill off the table, and he's refused either to reject the reconciliation, the nuclear option, that is a threat that's hanging over everybody at this table. And so what occurs to me is when I think of the president trying to posture himself as bipartisan, a listener, one who wants to incorporate good ideas from both sides in there, but the man who has with a clenched fist said, no, I'm not going to take my bill off the table. No, we're going to hold reconciliation, nuclear option over your head. I'm reminded of the president as a candidate and as president that said to Ahmadinejad in Iran, if you'll just unclench your fist, we'll extend our hand. No preconditions. We'll sit down and talk with you and try to find an open mind and be able to reach a resolution with Iran that's gone on since 1979. Now, they want to use the nuclear option on Republicans, and they want to allow Iran to develop nuclear capability, and the conditions that he offered to Ahmadinejad have been denied to Republicans. He insists on keeping his bills on the table, the reconciliation nuclear option on the table, and refuses to open and extend his hand with a blank slate or a blank piece of paper where we could actually start where we needed to start, and that is single standalone pieces of legislation, not a Republican comprehensive bill either. The American people don't want something that's put together behind closed doors. They want something put together that they can understand out in the open, and that is ending lawsuit abuse. We know that by a report of government reform that came out a couple of days ago, that the annual cost of lawsuit abuse in health care is at $210 billion a year. I've used it $203 billion a year in my own calculations. And so if the American people and the patients and the taxpayers are going to write a check to a lot of it, the trial lawyers in America, to the tune of $210 billion a year, and President Obama is not willing to take one dime out of the pocket of the trial lawyers, but he insists on taking $500 billion out of Medicare beneficiaries, the senior citizens in America, that we set one bill on the table. It needs to be lawsuit abuse reform as a standalone. And if the Democrats and the president, who dominate this with the president brokering the time, the moderator-in-chief, 4-1 on the time being spoken today, if they won't take lawsuit abuse reform, I say Republicans walk away and say, pull the trigger on your nuclear option. I dare you. Let's see what can happen here, because I don't think Nancy Pelosi has the votes in the House to pass it. I don't know that they have the votes in the Senate to pass it, but the American people don't know what's in it because that's a secret. So that's what I've seen today in the negotiations so far at the summit at the Blair House. Well, even though their time has been limited to appears to be about 20% of the overall minutes that are offered there in the 6-hour roughly summit that's there, Republicans have made factual points over and over again. They presented policy over and over, and I think the people that are watching, even though it isn't what anyone would describe as a level playing field, Republicans have demonstrated that we have policy solutions and that free markets and freedom and liberty are preferable to a socialized medicine. And the difference that's there in that table, you can see it clearly, is the Democrats, and the president included, they believe that the government should run health care in America. Republicans think that people should have choices that are focused in the private sector, and we should use free market solutions to this. And we have so many solutions that we've offered on the table today that will cut the costs of health care and provide more freedom and more liberty for people to make their own health care decisions. I think that on balance, if the American people are paying attention to the policy rather than the images as they are crafted and choreographed by the White House press team, I think that the Republicans in the end are going to win. Well, if we're going to do this over again, I don't want to. It's a one-time thing, so put it in history, but it's not producing any policy resolution. Anybody can see that. President Obama has not had an open mind to a single piece of policy. Watch his posture when he's listening, which is not for very long before he interrupts our Republicans. He sits back, cocks his head, and gives that look like, no, this is not the talking points that I get from my side. And so I suggested this. What we should have done was invited the president to an open forum where we as Republicans controlled the format and controlled the time. And we say, Mr. President, you're our guest, and now we will set the rules. That's how I would suggest it. And by the way, I would remind him, Mr. President, you're only the President of the United States. There are limitations to your power. You don't get to dictate to the American people. That's not the constitutional structure that we have set up. He cannot start a single piece of legislation. He can't start a spending bill, a tax bill, or a health care or socialized medicine bill. He can't do any of that. All he can technically do is sit back and sign it if it gets to his desk. We control this thing in the Congress because we're the voice of the people. And the people's voice has been heard in Virginia, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. And if the president's tin ear can't hear the message on Scott Brown out of Massachusetts, then we just need to pull the plug on this, walk away, and start all over. And if we cannot get some kind of agreement on lawsuit abuse reform, then we need to bank all of this discussion, get past the election in November of this year, because the thing to understand is that the American people voted, they put majorities in here, a Pelosi majority, they put a Harry Reid majority in, and they elected President Obama. And I said then, if you elect that troika, that being the troika, the leadership team of Pelosi, Reid, and Obama, they can go in a phone booth and decide what they want to do to America. I think that was a true prediction, but I didn't take into account, and neither does President Obama, the power of the American people who have filled up town hall meetings and filled up this Capitol over and over again. They demand constitutional principles. So as I look ahead to how this goes, I would make this point that the center of America has shifted. They have buyer's remorse with these majorities in Congress that exist today with liberal Democrats in charge of the gavels. They have buyer's remorse with the President of the United States. And when November comes, the election that'll be the time. When November comes, that will be when the election catches up with the position of the electorate.